God calling me to move to Houma was one of the most faith-testing scenarios I had ever been in. I've talked about it before, but it's just because it's such a pivotal moment in my life. Life as I knew it would drastically change as God was calling me to completely start a new life in a different place. But as I trusted in God and as I said, God, I'm going to give you my yes, I watched as God unfolded an amazing story for my life and how he's done an incredible work and done such amazing things. And I'm sure that we all have stories like this of the faithfulness of God. And we talk about the importance with these stories of if you put your faith in God and trust in him, that God will pull through and God will always be the answer. And we know this. But so often what happens is we trust in God, we put our faith in him, but as soon as he answers the promise, we abandon our faithfulness. But we don't see this in a character in the Bible that we see in Genesis chapter 22, when God gave Abraham a promise of a son. And Abraham trusted God, had faith in God that the promise would be fulfilled. And here comes Isaac, a son of promise. And Abraham's faithfulness got him to this place of trusting in God, and the promise is fulfilled. But then we come to a place where God asked Abraham to give the promise right back. He tells Abraham to sacrifice his one and only son. And this obviously would have made no sense. I mean, God, this is a son of promise. But here Abraham is saying, I've trusted God this much. And if God is calling me to do this, then I will do it as well. And so Abraham takes his son, goes to the mountain, and is getting ready to slay his son as God has asked him to do. But what we see in our family devotional scripture is that this actually proved Abraham's faithfulness after the promise was fulfilled, and God was able to do so much more through him. Let's read our scripture now together. Genesis 22:12. He said, "Do not lay your hand on the boy or do anything to him, for now I know that you fear God, seeing you have not withheld your son, your only son, from me." So I'm here with Arabella, and we've heard the messages, Arabella, of we've got to have faith, we've got to trust in God. And anybody that's been in church any amount of time knows that if I trust in God, even if I haven't seen what I'm hoping for take place, if God said something's going to happen, it's going to happen. But that's not really what this Devo is about. And it's not really what I want to talk about with our scripture, because here's the truth that we unfortunately see. People often have faith to trust in God, and they're consistent in seeking God for a promise and seeking God for something great. But it seems after he fulfills that promise, a lot of times we abandon the faith, or we kind of go back to a kind of mild approach in our walk with God. Why do you think that it is that we abandon our faith sometimes and don't stay faithful with God after he fulfills the promise?
Because sometimes that we just believe that even though he gave us something that we've been searching for, we just lose that connection after. Like, it drains us after we have these big encounters with God, or like he gives us something.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. I think what you're hinting at, and you're right on, is we're actually seeking God for the wrong reasons. We're seeking him so he can give us something rather than seeking him. And then God gives us that thing we're seeking, and it's like, okay, God, I don't need you anymore because I got what I want from you. And really, that's just a bad approach to God that says, I want what you can give, but I don't really want you. And so, man, such an important thing for us to check our heart on that. But let's take it a step further. Sometimes we don't necessarily abandon the faith. We don't necessarily abandon the seeking of God, but we're quick to gloat or brag about, oh yeah, this happened in my life, almost as if we're taking credit for what God did. And maybe it's not taking credit for what God did, but instead of showing God's goodness, we said, man, I was faithful. I kept seeking God. And we kind of put the attention on us. Why do you think it's so easy for us to kind of steal God's glory in those kind of moments?
So whenever we try to do that is because that the same thing. We've been seeking after this and we're like, yeah, I did that. Yeah, I stayed faithful. But it's actually that we are getting what we want out of seeking and praying about what we want and not giving it back to God.
Yeah, it's a self-focus. It's a centering of us, and I think this speaks largely of our entire relationship with God when we have this approach. It's not really about God and seeking God, but it's us being where we need to be and us getting what we want. And I'm here and I'm doing this, and you're saying we've created a walk with God. Unfortunately, a lot of times that isn't about God at all, but it's all about us. And in a weird, ironic kind of way, what that does is it actually makes us the God, which is, of course, dangerous territory. And well, that leads to the next question. So you have somebody, they're seeking God, trusting in God. God, I really want you to answer this. God answers this, and then they kind of just forget about the seeking and the depth that was built in that seeking of what they were looking for. Man, what does that say about someone's faith? Like we saw with Abraham, like God gave him a promise. Abraham could have said, no, this is mine, but he didn't. He gave it back to God. What does it say to somebody about somebody's faith if they're not willing to give that promise back to God or continue the patterns that got them the promise fulfilled? What does it say about their faith?
So that means that they are like faking their faith, or like they are like saying they're one thing, or like they're acting another. And then they like, whenever they get this promise, they just forget about what actually happened and they just lose it.
Yeah, and it's a prideful approach, right? It's a, like we said, that self-centered focus, that self-centered faith. And all in all, I think what we're talking about here is that it's very important for us to understand the things God has given us. God, they still belong to God. He has given us these things. And I think sometimes we just get caught up in what we want in our relationship with God, and we kind of take God out of a walk with God, which of course doesn't make any sense, but it's a good evaluation point for us. Where is your walk with God? What are you really seeking after? Is it what God can give you, or is it God Himself? I want to ask you this: if God never did anything else for you in your entire life, would He still be enough for you? Abraham teaches us that God gives, it still belongs to God, and if He calls us to give it back, we should give it back. And so I want to talk about these things now in our family discussion question.